Good evening, visitors. Welcome to the Australian War Memorial's Last Post ceremony. My name is Emily Hiles, and joining us today from the Royal Australian Navy is Petty Officer Cameron Erskine. We welcome the veterans who have served, those that are still serving, and the families that love and support them. We acknowledge the members of RSL and Services Clubs Association, RSL Victoria and RSL Queensland who are watching the broadcast of this ceremony across Australia. During this evening's ceremony, wreaths will be laid at the base of the pool of reflection by visitors to the memorial. If you're able, please stand and join in singing the national anthem. The Australian War Memorial was the vision of Charles Bean, Australia's First World War official historian. Bean landed with the Australian troops on Gallipoli and stayed with them at the front through to the end of the war. The idea of this national memorial and museum came to him at Pozières, France, in the depths of the bloody fighting of 1916. Bean's idea was that this would be a place where families and friends could mourn loved ones buried in faraway places. It would also be a place that could help all Australians understand what these men and women had endured and what they had done for us. Bean's vision, to which we remain true, is best expressed as inscribed in the entrance to the memorial's galleries. Here is their spirit, in the heart of the land they loved, and here we guard the record which they themselves made. Tonight, we will read the story behind just one of those on the Roll of Honour, which lists the names of more than 102,000 men and women who have given their lives for us in war and on operations for more than a century. But first, we present a lament, flowers of the forest. Wreaths and floral tributes will now be laid at the base of the pool of reflection.
Today we remember and pay tribute to Private Frederick Arthur Hicks. Fred Hicks was born in 1875, the third son of Arthur and Mary Ann Hicks of Victoria. Born in Heathcote near Bendigo, he grew up in South Melbourne, where he attended Dorcas Street State School. After completing his education, he went on to manage his father's business as a wood merchant for many years. He later became a registered bookmaker, which was his job when war broke out in 1914. Fred Hicks enlisted in the Australian Imperial Force in December 1914. A redhead in his youth, Hicks now had grey hair and seemed to have put down his age by a year or two to ensure that he was accepted for service. He underwent a period of training in Australia before leaving in April 1915 on board the troop ship Wiltshire. He had been at sea for less than 2 weeks when the main Australian force landed on Gallipoli. Private Hicks was first sent to Egypt, but with heavy casualties in Anzac Cove, he was soon sent to Gallipoli to reinforce the 8th Battalion. He arrived on the 26th of May 1915, 1 month and 1 day after the Dawn landing. From the time of his arrival, his battalion was assigned the task of defending the Anzac perimeter, which meant that he would have spent lots of time on the front line. Lieutenant Jennings of the 8th Battalion, writing from Gallipoli in 1915, described, "In the front of our lines there was a blown-up piece of ground which has been causing some anxiety to us, as it would be a likely place for the Turks to mass and make a rush on us. 2 volunteers were called to go and look more closely at the patch of ground. Private Hicks was among the chosen." Jennings continued, "After being given very definite instructions as to what the commanding officer wished to discover and what they would do in certain contingencies, they went out through an opening in a tunnel from our lines at 10:45 p.m. on the night of Tuesday, the 17th of August. Both men reached the near bank of the crater and waited there for a time listening, and then, as they could hear no sound, they worked their way up so they could examine the inside. They were just about to go down to cross the other side when a Turk spotted them and gave a shout of alarm. This was taken up all along the enemy line, and an intense fire broke out right along their trench. They evidently thought that we were advancing on them. Hicks and Private Green immediately took cover. Once the firing died down, they tried to make their way back to their own lines. Green made it back, reporting that Hicks had made it to cover and would be in soon." Jennings continued, "Hicks safely reached within a few yards of the exit, but mistook the hole. As he got up, he jumped clean into one filled with barbed wire, in which he sank over his knees and just then was wounded in the stomach and thigh. We called to him, 'Are you hit?' And his reply and last words were, 'Oh, I'm done.' He then fell on his side. We worked hard to get him in and succeeded in about 5 minutes, but he had breathed his last." Tributes to Private Fred Hicks were sent home to his family in Melbourne. Captain Ham, also of the 8th Battalion, wrote, "He indeed died like a hero, and I am sure you are, as well as we, proud of him for his noble action." Lieutenant Jennings wrote, "He died a hero for his king and country, and we are all very proud of him. Before entering the tunnel, your son shook hands with him, and I wished him luck, and his last words to me were, 'If anything happens, will you see Captain Dexter, the Anglican minister, with us, and get him to write to the old man and let him know. Expressing my sincerest sympathy with you and all his relatives and friends, and also my great admiration for a brave man who gave his life for his country's cause.' Today, Fred Hicks is buried in Shrapnel Valley Cemetery on Gallipoli, beneath the inscription, 'One of Australia's best.' He was 40 years old. His name is listed on the Roll of Honour to my right, amongst 62,000 Australians who died whilst fighting the First World War. This is but one of many stories of service and sacrifice told here at the Australian War Memorial. We now remember Private Frederick Arthur Hicks, who gave his life for us, our freedoms, and in the hope of a better world.
Please stand for the reading of the Ode and the sounding of the last post.
They shall not grow old, as we who are left grow old. Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. At the going down of the sun, and in the morning, we will remember them.
We will remember them.
Lest we forget.
Lest we forget. We leave you this evening with the words of the memorial's founder, Charles Bean. Many a man lying out there at Pozières or in the low scrub at Gallipoli, with his poor, tired senses barely working through the fever of his brain, has thought in his last moments, well, it's over, but in Australia, they will be proud of this. Ladies and gentlemen, that concludes the last post ceremony. On behalf of the Director and staff, thank you for visiting the Australian War Memorial today and for your continued support of the Memorial's development project. We wish you all a very pleasant evening.